And,
Well, hello, hello, hello.
and scene.
And now we're live, Andy Foote. So welcome everybody to the LinkedIn Live Lounge. I do apologise that my guests and I are a little bit late because we were just too busy chatting and catching up on stuff. But we will obviously carry on those conversations right here on the live. So my guest today is a fellow Brit who now lives in America. And Andy and I do have quite a lot in common, and that's what we were talking about, and we will go over this. But welcome to my esteemed guest, Andy Foote.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me. Look, I'm on there twice. I'm on as with Andy Foote, and then Andy Foote right next to it. It's
Twice.
double billing, yeah.
So we've got a double Andy Foote.
I should have checked before, but is it okay for me to record this on my Rodecaster Pro?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
You are on recording. You're on there.
Shows you how much we were chit-chatting without actually talking about any of the technical stuff.
Absolutely. Oh, well. Yes, it's supposed to be a technical check-in, but we didn't kind of do that. But we're here.
Indeed.
And this is what I love about live. When you know, if you make mistakes and it all goes a bit belly up, it doesn't really matter. Nobody really minds. So
it's true.
We're good.
And you, if you're a dab hand at editing, you can take all kinds of stuff out. Like if you have questions and you deal with those, and it doesn't make much sense in the podcast to have that because people don't really understand what's going on, then you can just cut that stuff out.
Absolutely, you can. I have my wonderful podcast editor who does that for me because I am not very good at that kind of stuff. Despite being married to a film editor, he will not touch my stuff.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I've heard that before. I've heard, for example, tax professionals say, no, there's no way that I want you to do our taxes. You know, and yeah, there's a professional divide when it comes to husband and wife, and I still don't think my wife knows what I do. She does.
As long as you pay the mortgage, Andy, I'm sure she doesn't care.
That's also true, I think. Yeah.
So my husband, actually, to be fair on him, he does do quite big projects, and he's been working on the ABBA virtual reality hologrammy thing, you know, the big show that's on in East London. And I did say to him, you know, I think you should drop ABBA and work for me. And he wasn't very keen. But there you go.
So,
Andy Foote.
Yes.
Reassuringly expensive LinkedIn coach. I love that. And you've always, ever since I've known you, you've had that as your strapline. And I guess it works for you.
I know it works because I am getting regular in-mail stuff saying from complete strangers saying, "Oh, I love your tag, I love your headline." So that's certainly feedback, and you know that I'm not going to change it, and I think that's probably the 15th or 16th iteration version of a headline that I was trying to use to market myself. So yeah, that's the one I'm going to stick with. I really like it. Others apparently do. I think there's some honesty to it as well as some oomph, right? The guy's clearly saying that he's worth it. And I thought I was a genius when it popped into my brain one morning, Sarah, and then I was reminded by someone, like literally months after I chose it, and they told me, "Yeah, this is a Stella Artois campaign back in the 80s. I think it was Europe or UK, and they used the reassuringly expensive to describe their beer." And so then I remembered, but I was thinking, crikey, did I really steal it, or did I just come up with it on my own? So regardless, yeah, it's quite good. It's one I'm happy with.
Good. And you haven't had a cease and desist notice from Stella Artois saying you copied our logo?
You know that it's far too vague, and If I was in the beer business, then of course they'd have a they'd have a they'd have a case, but no way that's going to happen.
No, absolutely. And the reason, obviously, my brain goes to the legal side of things is because what we were talking about earlier, about our earlier careers or potential careers, shall we
Indeed.
say, because
Yeah.
we both studied law and sort of vaguely tried to be lawyers. And
Yeah,
here
we
we
did.
are, we're both LinkedIn coaches, isn't
Yeah.
it? I find it all a bit weird, really,
I
how
think
it's
and
happened.
and I and I think it's also interesting that we were both motivated by our parents, and I think that has maybe something to do with it. If we were intrinsically excited and motivated to do it, then possibly we may have, gone through with it and actually practiced. But we both got the official credentials and then decided, let's see what else there is.
Yeah, exactly. We certainly did. And my father, I was telling you, was very disappointed, whereas I think yours wasn't so.
Yeah,
But there we go. Anyway, but my father thought I was very clever, and I sort of established that to my dad that actually I'm not as thick as you think I am, Dad. And so that worked. That kind of
yeah.
worked. But and here we are on LinkedIn helping people with their careers and living their dream. So yeah. And I'm guessing you have kids, right?
I have the one. I
You
have
have the
a I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's a terror.
Is she?
I'll walk into her room, and she'll grunt at me. I thought only teen boys did that, but so yeah. And now she's recently learned how to drive, so she's hijacking our car and driving all of her mates around, and I'm constantly having to refill this gas guzzling SUV, and thankfully it's a bit of a clunker. So she's had in one day, Sarah, she had a speeding ticket, a parking ticket, and in that week she had a bump, an and we sat her down and said, "Okay, hon, let's be aware of our surroundings." That goes for ticketing. That goes for everything. Just be aware and just stop with the heavy foot on the accelerator. And the cop could have done her for having multiple occupants, because at that age in the US, you're only allowed to, I think, be with one other person. She had like three mates. Yeah. So
Okay,
she's learning fast.
she's learning fast. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to use that analogy as an analogy for LinkedIn. So being aware of your surroundings, being aware of other people on LinkedIn. So I had a conversation with a client this morning who said, I'm just fed up of trying to get people to comment on my posts, even tagging people in posts in a relevant and appropriate way, because obviously they're working with me and they would do nothing else. And then these people don't come over and comment on my posts, but they're still very happy to take the glory. And being aware that you're not the only person on LinkedIn, that there are other people there as well. And I see you on LinkedIn, and you're quite generous with your commenting and what have you. And I just wondered what are your thoughts on being aware of other people on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think we could all probably do more, and we could probably all be quite strategic about it. And by it, I mean our commenting strategy. Um, I know of many people who have it down that they comment with people that they know, but they're also in growth mode. So that's where the strategy, well, I think an important part of the strategy is not just thinking about commenting as retaining what you have in terms of the community that you built, the relationships that you built, but also going out there and adding to that base of support. And the theory, I think, makes sense. The reciprocal nature of commenting is, okay, if I comment on Sarah's stuff, then she's going to notice that and feel obliged to comment on mine where relevant. I think that's important too, because if it's not relevant, then your heart's not in the comment, and that comes across. It's a short comment, or it's a great, this is wonderful, and that really doesn't add anything to the conversation thread. But tagging's a different beast. Tagging, I recently I finally got around to putting my my audio rooms on a podcast. I'm using Podbean, pretty happy with it. And so I'm going all the way back, and I'm starting from the earliest and working my way forward to the latest. And I'm tagging all of the co-hosts that were on this show. And I had one post, and I listed, I think it was four or five of the co-hosts, and not one of them responded. And I thought, what the? But I also realized that people are busy, and perhaps it's something that they don't feel they want to do, which you already mentioned. So I'll keep doing that. Maybe that was just an outlier. But if I'm tagged and I've been on a show, then you better believe I would come and say, hey, that was, loved that. Thank you for now it's permanent. It's not ethereal. It's weird.
Absolutely. No, and you did the same when I posted about this event only yesterday, because I hadn't quite got my act together. But the minute that post went out and I tagged you in, obviously you came over and commented on it. And it helps you, it helps the person who's writing the comment, because it helps their engagement. It places them right back slap bang in front of the person who has posted. And the opportunities that can come from a good commenting strategy are enormous. I mean, I've seen clients get the most incredible work and jobs because they've commented on somebody's post that they wanted to put themselves in front of. That person's read their comment, or somebody else has even read their comment, and it's just developed into a relationship. Indeed. And then led to work.
Yeah. The question is, do you let that go? Do you treat it as the outlier? That was a bit weird. Normally, someone of the tag list responds, or do you try and figure out what the heck's going on? Do you contact them individually and say, hey, Nick, I tagged you recently, and you didn't. I'm no shame, but no critique. But did you see it? And oh yeah, just too busy. Sorry. Okay, fine. That's the next move potentially. If you worry about it.
I've done the same with somebody who maybe isn't on LinkedIn every day. That maybe they're not popping to LinkedIn every day. So I've actually sent them the URL of the post via WhatsApp and said, just tag the post, exclamation mark, and they go, oh, goody, and off they went and they did comment. So there are lots of different ways to do it, but you would hope that tagging somebody is enough. But obviously,
and then there are all kinds of theories about if you do not get someone responding to a tag, then that harms your reach, and that kind of makes sense. I don't think anyone's ever been able to conclusively prove that. So yeah, that's the other thought. But if someone is not on LinkedIn and sees it a week later and there's, oh goodness, let me take care of a lot of stuff. Oh, I see Andy's tagged me. Let me just respond. Then there's also the possibility that, well, it's too late, right? Because no one knows how the algo works. And if it's a delayed response, is any response better, even if it's delayed or within the first, golden hour, as it used to be?
Yes, the golden hour, which is now golden 90 minutes, which doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well. But
well, is it 90? I mean,
well,
really?
we don't know.
Who knows? Who knows?
Exactly. I actually was in the wrong screen and didn't realize we've got some comments. So Varsha, hey Sarah, Clay, and hello Andy from India. Hello Varsha.
Hi Varsha.
And Marianne, I love Marianne joins. I think she comes nearly every week. She remembers the Stella Artois campaign.
Oh yeah, it was a good one.
Reassuringly expensive.
Yeah.
And Kim, listening to you both while I'm unpacking 2020 Clubhouse style, because that's where we met.
Yes, that's where a lot of people, I think, sort of meshed on LinkedIn. It was very cool. It was really the first very popular audio networking tool. There was a tool before that called trying to remember the name of it now.
Well, there was Twitter. Twitter brought one out afterwards, didn't they? Which did Spaces, which didn't really work, I don't think.
Right. No, before that it was Blab.im.
Oh,
was
wow.
exactly the same principle. It was easily 2 or 3 years before Clubhouse, and I jumped into that as well and played around with it, and they just couldn't make it work because it devolved into partying and all kinds of, yeah, it was just pure social. There was no value which the creators realized was not going anywhere.
No, exactly. And the wonderful thing about Clubhouse and the amazing timing was that we were all stuck in our homes in lockdown, and to
Exactly.
have that way of communicating with other
Yep.
people, it's just amazing, and well done Clubhouse for rolling it out at a very appropriate time.
Perfect
Um,
timing.
yeah, absolutely perfect timing, which takes me very smoothly into audio rooms,
Well done.
because then LinkedIn adopted the Clubhouse style and introduced audio rooms. And I know I've been in your audio room a couple of times, and I know you're a big fan. And I just, as a strategy for growing engagement, etc., I'd love to know how you use your audio room.
Yeah, huge fan of LinkedIn Audio. Was really delighted when they released it as a feature. I have to say, it's not been touched since release. By touched, I mean it's not been updated or improved or anything additional added to it. It is, it's exactly the feature that it was when it was launched. But it satisfied, certainly in me and perhaps others, the ability to tap our LinkedIn network, because on Clubhouse we were trying to work backwards, weren't we, into, okay, so let's connect on LinkedIn now that we're connected on Clubhouse. There's no need to do that. So I love the fact that it's native, and I what I like most about LinkedIn Audio is that it really shows what you've got. It really quickly, right, showcases whether you're a thinker, whether you're fast on your feet. It showcases your personality, and there's authenticity in it. It's very real. Sometimes it's raw. And my show, the Curious AF show, is essentially, although it's about news, it's not really. News is just the vehicle for engagement. That's just the thing. It's the campfire that we get around. And the beauty of that is that there's fresh content, so fresh stuff to discuss every day. And yeah, and it's actually a concept that I saw do very well on Clubhouse. So I kind of borrowed that too. And yeah, and people say, well, Andy, I'm not a news watcher. Is that a problem? Well, not really. I mean, you can come along and tell a story. What I don't want you to do is talk work. I don't want you to get on your soapbox and talk about the same old, because that is not this show. This show is about it's about spontaneity, even down to, I don't want to know what you're talking about beforehand. I'll set it up. I'll have a message set up specifically for the show where it's a back channel. And in that, I'll just give instructions. And one of the instructions is the number one rule of Fight Club, Curious AF, Curious AF show, is we don't talk about it. In other words, I don't want to know what you're going to talk about prior. To me, it's more fun. It's more spontaneous if we're all thinking on our feet. Because if I already knew you were going to talk about, I don't know, ABBA, or something going on, then I maybe I would research it myself, and that's not the way that I want to think, I want to work. So yeah, that's what the show is, and I love it, and the feedback I've had from everyone involved. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do know, and it's fun, and I want to go on to that in a second. But my experience of it was, so I typically did no research whatsoever. You asked me to come on the show, and then I get there and I am told I have to come up with 3 news items to talk about.
That's right.
I have no idea, and I'm not very up to date on news, particularly. And the news it might not be interesting to anybody else anyway, because I'm in London and people are all over the world. But the take on it was to find an interesting news article. So what did I do? I'm sitting there in the room and I'm Googling funny news
Yep.
stories at the moment, and I came up
Yep.
with a couple of howlers, and it worked, and
Yeah.
that's what I loved about the show. It is very spontaneous.
Yeah.
But the thing I wanted to talk to you about was that you have deliberately, as you've quite rightly identified, chosen not to talk about LinkedIn and not to talk about people's work, etc.
Yep.
And it's a fun news show. How does a show that has nothing to do with your career, if you like, and how you make your money, how does that help you?
Great question. I think in terms of visibility, it helps because the show goes out. It's now not just live version, and I was doing that consistently before I took a breath. And also now there's the podcast, so I'm getting two bites of the cherry. There's the live, and then there's the podcast. I think that's the first thing, visibility. I think the second thing is it just is so different that it's a breath of fresh air. And I think that shows my versatility and creativity. So when you're thinking about me as your LinkedIn coach, I'm probably the only person who's doing this in a big way on LinkedIn. So I think that's the way it helps me get clients. And it's
Well,
not it's not just about me, of course. It's everyone who's on the show gets to showcase themselves, not just strictly as this professional in a box, but as a thinker, as someone who can communicate eloquently and think on their feet. So yeah, I mean, this, make no mistake, this show it's not just a it is a free for all, but it's actually a test, right? I am looking for future co-hosts. If you perform really well, if you're engaging and you're saying interesting stuff, you're showing your breadth of knowledge, not just your niche, right? We're not touching your niche, it's your breadth. Then yeah, others pay attention, and you also may get inquiries. So yeah, visibility is important, but I think it delves deeper into who you are as a person, not just a professional. And yeah, I've seen so many boring webinars that I just I don't want to see any more of that. I think people actually want something which is refreshingly different, and it's the pure engagement vehicle seems to work.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And when I teach my corporate clients, we play a game. We always start with a game of human bingo,
Right.
copyrighted, by the way, and it helps all the team. And I get all these corporate people standing up and with their bingo cards and asking each other questions. And of course, they all start going, "What on earth are we doing this for? Why? This is just crazy. What on earth is this woman doing?" But by the end of the game, they all know so much more about each other. You find out that somebody's got a garage full of snakes, or that somebody went to a Fleetwood Mac concert that you went to, and maybe you stood next to them years before you actually knew them, and all of these funny little things that come out. And they realize that the point of LinkedIn is about communication. It's about getting to know people, and it's not just about I do this and I do that. It's so much more. And that's exactly what you're saying about your
Yeah.
your
Yeah,
show.
I think that's the quickest way to understand who a professional is by going the personality route or route. My sister was giving me grief about how I use the American route instead of the British route.
Yeah, well, I would have done had you not corrected
Right.
yourself.
So it's the equivalent of those folks who only do purely social posts where they're just talking about uh, where they went on holiday, or rather than work. And that's what this show is. It's the purely social aspect. I tend to go via social in some of my comments because I want to share a bit about my personality. I think that's the best way to understand who a person is. And that's ultimately how people decide, isn't it? It's all right, who do I decide? I've got so many people to choose from, these various coaches. I've narrowed it down to 5. Who's this Andy Foote geezer? Oh, let me tune into his show. Well, I quite like the sound. He sounds like he's got it together, and he's an interesting character. I think I might want to have a couple of hours of LinkedIn assistance from him. So that's how you differentiate yourself.
Absolutely, 100%. And yeah, and I think, as you say, there are so many competitors out there on LinkedIn,
Yep.
whatever you're doing, unless you're doing something really unusual. But there are lots of LinkedIn coaches. There are lots of coaches in general. There are lots of copywriters. There are lots of photographers. And it is about identifying why they should choose you as opposed to somebody else,
Right.
because we all work in different ways and we all
Yep.
appeal to a different audience. And one of the things I love about being a LinkedIn coach is the LinkedIn coaching community. And it is a community. And we're competitors, you and I, effectively,
Yep.
in the kind of sense, well, we are.
Yep.
But here we are chatting away like pals. And we also have another LinkedIn coach who has joined us, Tony Mickelson, who I had the great fortune to meet in person 2 weeks ago in Birmingham, as they say in America, at Uplift Live. And, Tony's here and he's commenting and he's calling you his idol, Andy. Isn't that wonderful?
That's amazing. I really appreciate it. I don't want your family to starve though, so you have to multitask, Tony. You have to do the cooking and the tuning in if you have a laptop, if you can do that. But joking aside, yeah, that's that's always lovely to hear. It shows. It reinforces that you're putting some good stuff out there that's appreciated by people. And you're right. Yeah, it's a big-ish community. By big-ish, we kind of know everyone in our business, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Even if it's 200 or 300, we know all of them, and we're very close to some of them, and distant with others. But we know who they are, and we know exactly what they do. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I was actually talking to a lawyer just before coming on here, and she said it's a very different. It's not, you don't get that same sort of, she didn't feel that there was that same kind of collaboration as I was explaining that we have in LinkedIn. And we're all we have different forums and groups and we share information, don't we? And I love, I can go in and say, oh, something's happened to my LinkedIn. Has it happened to anybody else? They go, yes, it happened to mine. No, it hasn't happened to mine.
Right.
And we all kind of muddle through things together, which is brilliant. So yes.
Yeah.
And you, on a more personal note, you left Scotland. No, you were university in Scotland, weren't you? And then
Correct. Yeah.
when did you make it go over to the States?
So I qualified in Scotland, and then I headed south to London. I got a job initially with in legal recruitment, did that for a couple of years, and then I joined the Confederation of British Industry in an account management role. So I was basically meeting with CEOs and asking them about their issues so that we could lobby government. For those of you that don't know what the CBI does, I did that for 5 years, and during, I think it was the fifth year, I met my future wife, who happens to be American, and once we got serious about our relationship, we decided, okay, yeah, the US is going to be our home. And that was the very short conversation I had with my dad. I said, Dad, I've met this amazing woman. I'm going to marry her, and we're going to move and live in the US permanently. And he said, son, I'm delighted to hear that, but don't be expecting a visit from me anytime soon. He's a gruff Scottish soldier, and I took no offense whatsoever. I knew he was telling the truth, but I also knew where he's coming from. He just doesn't want to travel. So if I if we're to see each other, I'm going to be heading back to the UK, which I'll be doing
Wow.
soon.
Wow, that's intriguing. And you don't miss us over here, presumably.
I miss many aspects of the UK. Some might seem petty. For example, the bread. The bread over here is usually full of sugar. If you want something that tastes kind of normal, you have to pay so much for. It's called artisanal. But most of the American food is unfortunately highly processed, and it's not very good for you. So yeah, I mean, and also I miss the broadsheets. My thing on a Sunday morning when I was living in Chelsea was to go to the newsagents and grab the Telegraph, the Independent, or whatever, and get a bar of chocolate And that was my routine. And I miss little things like that, but also the British sense of humor, right? The Americans don't really do humor like we do humor.
No, maybe it's for a good thing, eh? Our humor is
Possibly.
quite unique. I love our humor. Do you know, I was talking to somebody earlier about I use the word Ronseal a lot.
Yeah.
And how when we're setting up our LinkedIn profiles, we need to be Ronseal. And this woman was New Zealand. And I said, do you know what I mean? She goes, yeah, I do. I said, do you know where it came from? She had no idea. So I've sent her 2 YouTube clips of the Ronseal commercials. And she was really chuffed. She was like, wow, now I know. But she knew the word and knew what it meant, but she didn't know where it had come from. But that's the classic English, isn't it? I love it. So I can't believe we are at time, and these fly by so fast. And poor Tony's kids are having rye
Rye
bread.
bread. Exactly. There could be a worse bread, Tony.
That's true.
Rye bread's
This
pretty good.
is bread.
Yeah.
Tony, don't blame Andy though, right? Because we wouldn't want to, we wouldn't want him getting into trouble for that.
Exactly.
I was going to ask you something else, but it's quite slipped my mind. What I am going to ask you for is 3 nugget takeaway tips. So your thing is content. You're very big on content. And I know you talk about bland, dry, boring old content quite a lot. And your content is quite out there. It's interesting. It's thought-provoking. It's different, which is why we like it. And I was wondering if you could give us maybe 3 content nuggets that we can take away with us.
Let's see. I think number 1, think of content creation as a process rather than a goal. What do I mean by that? So the guy from Breaking Bad, blanking on his name now, Bryan Cranston.
Yes.
He was in the doldrums with his acting career. He wasn't getting the recognition, the industry rewards and awards, and he'd been doing it for quite a while. I think this was 10 years in or so. So he met with an acting coach and explained the issue. And the acting coach said, I think very insightfully, Brian, forget about the gongs, forget about the Oscars and all of that stuff and getting credit for your great work. Find enjoyment in the process and focus on that enjoyment by just doing instead of achieving, and then the achieving will come. And of course, that's exactly what happened. And I think that's an important mindset shift that we can all learn from when we're on this content production thing, where a post gets no traction whatsoever, and it's pretty, it's pretty debilitating, and it's hard, especially if you've put your heart and soul into something and you've researched it and you think this post is going to catch fire, and it doesn't. It does make you wonder. But as long as you enjoy the whole production, the whole process of putting content together, and keep with that enjoyment, I think eventually you'll find the success that you probably deserve. So I say that I'm an overnight success on LinkedIn that took 10 years. So I just didn't catapult in, and suddenly I built up those 50,000 or so followers over a decade. It took me that long. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is use LinkedIn as a lab. So everything is public. Everything content-wise is public. You can see exactly how content is appreciated by looking at the comments. So your task is A, why is it being appreciated? Why is it getting the engagement? And B, how can I replicate that in a style that works for me so that it's authentic? So not just stealing it, but actually analyzing it thoroughly to find out exactly why I got that engagement and how can I do that. And I think the third thing is experiment. So I always experiment. I'm always trying different stuff because frankly that's the only way that I'll understand for myself what seems to be working. So during the process and enjoying all of it, part of that enjoyment for me is finding new ways to do stuff. So I'm always trying to reinvent the way that I come across in terms of my content. So the example I'll give is that last October, I realized what was happening with reach. I thought, yeah, I'm kind of getting burnt out on just posting every day. I'm not really paying much attention to my newsletter either. I'll come back to that someday. But what about audio? I've always enjoyed audio. Maybe this is a right time to pivot to audio. So that's where the LinkedIn audio session started. That's why I created the Curious AF show. And also where I do my social club for my Bluvian community. And so it's all audio, and it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of planning to do that, and a bit of investment in the hardware if I want to record it and have a decent mic to have decent audio. But that's what I'm doing now, and I'm doing it because I enjoy it, because I wanted a break, and so far so good.
What brilliant tips. I'm trying to recollect. So the first one was enjoy it as a process and
Yes.
actually enjoy it.
Yeah, actually enjoy it.
I really enjoy it because it will show. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And when I work with the big organizations and they say, well, how many of our employees should we get on LinkedIn? And I say, well, those that will enjoy it and will want to do it, because if you're dragging people by their teeth to comment and post on LinkedIn, it's going to
Won't
show.
work.
Look
Yeah,
awful,
won't work. Yeah, won't work.
Anyway, but yeah, it won't work. Look at your results, analyze, and I think many of us, and I will put my hands up here, very guilty of not doing enough of that, and really looking, well, actually, this post is doing really badly. Why is it doing badly? Or this one did really well, as you said. Let's have a look at why, and to test. Too many people just do the same thing over and over and over, and it's boring. It is boring.
Right.
And that's one of the things I do love about your content, is it's always changing, it's always different, and it's always interesting. So
Thanks, bud.
there you go. And here's my final question, which is a daft question, but I've got to ask it. How can we get hold of you, Andy? Where will we find?
Well, not so dark. I'm on this thing called LinkedIn. You might have heard of it. So my profile page is I think where the discovery starts and hopefully doesn't end.
Hooray, hooray. Andy Foote, thank you so much. And thank you for kind of getting to know each other in the lockdown days, reaching out. I remember you reached out to me and asked me to come on your show, and I was so flattered. And here we are, and it's great. So thank you so much for your time today and your amazing insights. And I will be coming into your audio room again soon. I think we were looking at dates because it's such fun. And thank you very much, Andy Foote. I'm going to play us out with a bit of music. Hang on. Here we go.
Thank you so much, Sarah.